Hello, YouTube, and welcome to the second episode of the ArtaCast. I'm excited for the next episode. The first episode did do very well, so I'm glad that you liked it, and I want to say thank you for all the support till now. So we are, yeah, encouraged to go on with this, and we have both, I think, much fun. And of course, we have good topics right now. As today, the day recording today, the last cards of the new set were revealed, so we have all cards available now, and the brewing season begins, and we can start to build decks. I want to say something else. About the tournament that's ahead in 2 weeks. I was elected by you, and it's very honored that you elected me. But next time you should vote for LD too, because he deserves to be there too. Okay, that's all I have to say.
I don't know about that. I think you can represent for the both of us.
No, you deserve that too.
It's very
But
kind.
yeah, I think I had a really good because I'm content creator, that's always helpful for such voting systems. But yeah, I'm really excited, and therefore I need to build decks very, very, very fast, because we have to do the deck list before 2 days before the tournament starts. So I will not have that much time to build a deck. And
Yeah, you'll be playing on you're playing on release weekend, right? The 16th
yes,
of
yes.
November is when the first games will be played.
So actually, when we have the physical cards, we can't test anymore. So we have to test with proxies now and cards, because we won't have time. And yeah, it's always like you can be the best player in the world and still underestimate or overestimate power level of cards. That's in the nature of any card game. I think nobody is able to completely evaluate the power level of cards. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, completely. It's a really different skill set to playing, isn't it? Like a lot of the people that are the best deck builders in the world are often not the best players in the world. They're typically very good. You have a strong understanding of the game and you could kind of do well at both things, but it's very rare to find someone who has that extremely creative and intuitive deck building sense, and also the ability to sort of flawlessly execute in a competitive setting. So tournaments in the early days of new formats, like the one you're going to be playing in, are extremely interesting, and you get to see, I don't know, it sort of rewards a different skill set. The other thing that's kind of been on my mind, thinking about the skill of evaluating cards, is as we've gone on through the different sets of Lorcana, we've kind of seen people narrow their focus. There are lots of deck specialists out there, people that have kind of picked one thing they like. And it's really easy to get biased. I'm seeing this in lots of
Yeah,
people that I've talked to. You have your biases, and you
yeah.
see a card that looks like it probably destroys your deck, and you immediately think, "This is
It's
the most insane thing
unplayable.
this is the most insane thing I've ever seen. How could this card ever be printed?" And then there are other people out there who play like a completely different deck to you that think, "Why would you ever play this?" And it's really hard to remove yourself from those biases and
Yeah,
think,
yeah,
is this like objectively good,
yeah,
or is this good
yeah.
against me or for me? And yeah, really hard to challenge that thinking in yourself.
I also think the conversation about cards is very important, because there are certainly some cards I saw in the reveal and I thought, okay, they are really busted or they are really bad. And then I talked with other people and other good people, and they told me sometimes the exact opposite, and that helps us to to think again about some cards which we have a really initial opinion of. So I think that's very important. Yeah, today we want to do for you. We want to give you 6 day one deck lists we made. what could be kind of ideas, what could be good in the next format, it won't be the decks that probably win the European Championship or something, but it's ideas with new cards, and what we think day one could be good. Just the first ideas of us. I hope that will help you to just get some inspiration what decks you can build. But first of all, I want to talk about, because we had some comments last week where they wanted us to talk about especially two cards, and we didn't talk about them last week. So I just want to do that. The first one is the Tiana card, the new legendary Tiana. How do you like the card?
When it was first spoiled, when I first saw it, I thought like this is crazy powerful. I have a really bad like impulse control when I see new cards. I immediately think like this is unplayable or this is brilliant, and
Yeah,
then I look at it for about 2 more minutes, and then I think, okay, this is like a medium card, which is how most of the evaluation process goes. I had a really strong initial reaction to this. It looks really good in some of those more aggressive Amber Steel type builds. But you're really constrained by the uninkability, which is, I know it's boring for me to say that again,
but
but
it's
if
meaningful here.
yeah, it's especially meaningful for amber cards that kind of only these aggressive amber cards, they're only really paired with steel at the moment in the competitive landscape, and steel kind of has some auto-include uninkables like Storm and maybe Whole New World if you're going that route as well. That makes it even harder to find find room for certain uninkable cards, if that makes sense. So if I think that a card's best positioned in Amber Steel and it's uninkable, it has to be like absurdly
Mm,
good, right?
mm,
Which is kind of what put me off a little bit. The other slight issue I had with it is it's playing this protective role, which is great and something that it's going to protect aggressive early drops. It's going to curve nicely into a Rapunzel with that 4 willpower, which is exactly what those decks want to do. So it's really cool in that regard. But playing that protective role, it's then competing with some other cards like the new Simba. It's if you wanted to play with that Simba, for example, and I don't know which one's better, but a deck would really struggle to include them both, if that makes sense.
yeah.
It makes me a little bit colder to it. With that said, one of the decks that I've put together that we're going to talk about does have 4 Tianas in it, and it's a slightly different take. And I think probably, yeah, it's a little different. It's a little off the wall, but I think it might be a cool sort of shell for her. It's certainly a playable card, but it's going to struggle to find its home because of that uninkable constraint and the fact that the decks it goes into maybe don't have the most room for it.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything you said. And for me, I always look at cards, try to look at them from both sides, from when you are ahead and when you are behind, because I think
Mm,
that's very important. Because I really think cards that are only good when you're ahead are probably not the best choice, because you should be, maybe not always, but maybe be able to win that game anyway, or
mm,
should try to do that. And this card is really, really bad when you're behind. I mean, if they just don't care if you if you have nothing, if they are faster than you, they just don't care, and then it's uninkable. I imagine if you're Steel Song, Mirror Match, or the Draw, this card does absolutely nothing. They won't care. They just quest, and this card can't trade or something. So
yeah.
in general, this card is really bad from behind, and then it's uninkable. And the effect is, if you will remove her first, and then the effect is gone.
Mm.
So it's one time they pay 3 to remove her, and then the other cards aren't protected anymore. Yeah, you can have bodyguards and so, I know, but it's I don't think this will see competitive play, but it's only my first impression. Maybe
It's a
I'm wrong.
it's a really good point you make about it being bad when you're behind, because that is sort of further evidence that the only shell that would want this is a really aggressive build, right? Because you have to
Really
be built in
aggressive.
such a way where you are ahead as much of the time as possible. A standard Steel Song build does not want this. So what deck wants it? That maybe is to be discovered, but there might be one out there. It's a powerful card in a vacuum, but like you say, if a
Maybe
card is unequal, it needs to
yeah,
be good all the time, right? And this is only good like half the time. So
maybe in purple, yellow, or hyper aggro or something. But is it then better than Baloo or something? It's hard to say.
I, I I don't necessarily think so in those sorts of decks, but
No.
yeah, it's something to consider for sure.
Yeah, and the other card is the Jasmine, the shift one. Multiple people asked us about this card. The problem is really for me only the shift. That's a real tough condition for me. That it's only
Yeah,
working when she's shifted. That's really bad. I mean, she would probably be too good if it's not only when when shifted, but
yeah.
yeah, it would be too good. But that's a tough condition. It's so hard because you need to think about the deck building. Then you there are no really good Jasmines, and you have to play. I would say 8 of them or morph and one of them four times to be have this effect kind of consistent.
Yeah,
Um, and that's because Diablo, you
that's
can play Diablo if you have no shift. It's still playable on turn 3 or something. But
yeah.
this is you can't play this. I mean, you can, but it's it's really bad.
All of these effects that are, they only happen when you shift. It's it maybe doesn't seem like it's asking that much of you, but that is a lot. This card is really bad when you don't shift it. It doesn't do anything. It's a 6 cost 6/6. Is that right?
5/5.
5/5. Sorry, it's 6 cost 5/5. It's even worse than I thought. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
a 6 cost 6/6 would be okay. It's yeah, like you say, if you have to shift it to get the value, then what are you shifting from? Yes, morph, obviously, but then you need some Jasmine. There aren't really many playable Jasmines out there that look that good right now. So maybe the cumulative effect of having to put some subpar cards in your deck just to miss sometimes to have this. And even then, when you set it up, maybe you don't get to bounce as much as you like, and the opponent sees it coming a mile off because the only reason you'd play a small Jasmine is to shift this.
That's
It
the
all
next
adds up to
problem.
make it tough.
That's the next
Yeah.
problem. People will play can play around this kind of easy because if you play a small Jasmine, then you shouldn't exert all of your characters, and then I can't also this effects that require to shift. I think none of them did see competitive play, did they? No, I don't think there was
No, I don't
one
think so.
only when shifted character that saw competitive play. So I doubt it right now, but I am happy to be wrong. As always. I mean, the
Yeah, I'm not particularly high on the
effect is
card.
powerful. That's clear, but yeah,
It can't just be when it's situational like that and it only happens some of the time. It has to be ridiculously powerful. It would have to be on like more the level of the Milo Thatch type effect, right? Of bouncing everything, sort of regardless of exertion. Yeah, I'm not too high on the card. I'm not interested really.
okay. So let's go to our main goal today, and that's the deck lists. We both did think a lot, or maybe a bit, about some new decks that could have some potential with the addition of some new cards. And yeah, either of us, we both have 3 decks. I will start. Okay, so I
Yeah,
will
go
start
ahead.
with the first deck list I have to show you, and the first deck list I have is from a good Locana friend Coffin, who I'm talking a lot with him. He's a very good deck builder and player as well, and he brewed a lot with green blue last set, and he tries and he will try to make this really, really competitive. And yeah, we have some combos that Green Blue got that could be very powerful. And obviously, the combo is ramping up to Bend to My Will and discard the whole hand of your opponent. Best case in turn 4. What is really powerful? I thought about this, and it's stupid, because if you're on the play, it's really stupid because wow, turn 4, then your the opponent is on 3 ink. That's really, really early. That's really
Yeah.
early. And they have to ink most of the time the card they draw then, and it's really early. So that could be. I hope it's not too much annoying, this combo, or too strong on the play. But I tested this deck a bit, and the problem is a bit that when you do this combo, so you play on turn 2 1 jump, play on turn 3 quill, and turn 4 play this, then you have 1 card left in your hand.
Sure. Yeah.
And then that must be a Hiram, or you have no advantage then. So the deck is really hard to play, I think, and you need to juggle with card advantage and disadvantage, and that's really hard to figure out how we do that.
Yeah, this list looks really cool. I've seen some different approaches to this kind of thing, or at least some different thinking. I've seen some people try and jam Diablo in there, which is, like you say, you run out of cards quite quickly when you're trying to accelerate really fast towards this big 7-cost payoff, whether it's an early Clarabelle or a Bend to My Will. Diablo looks like it's going to help you do that, but is quite a high card commitment. If you're shifting a Diablo in the early game, is 3 cards. So
yeah,
you're going to get about 1 back every turn, but I don't know exactly how the math works out and when that starts to pay off for you. I guess like 2 turns time, but that might end up not being such a great line as it first appears. But certainly, I would imagine this list wants to kind of Clarabelle first, right?
Yeah, this wants
You
to get. That's
ramp
what
up.
I wanted to say. You ramp up to Clarabelle and then play Bentama will next turn. If you want to play this, I tell you, Coffin said to me he played around 100 games to learn this deck. I mean, it's really, really hard to play. It's so counterintuitive to some other decks that it's really, you need to practice this a lot. But I think Bend to My Will is a strong card, obviously, and
Yeah.
even in later of the game, you don't need to ramp it up. Problem is a bit, I tested this deck a bit, and it did quite the job that it should do. The problem is then how to close the game, and I think the most efficient ways are maybe the Magduck Manors here. Because once you have your opponent with 0 cards, then you still need to get to 20 lore somehow. And if you give him enough time, then they can come back. And that's a bit of the problem for the deck. But we have a lot of time now. There are many ways to make this probably work.
Yeah, if anybody can break this deck, it's Coffin, so we'll have to follow what he does this set very carefully.
I know expert of the deck, and I don't think I will invest many time into it because it's not my kind of play style, and just wanted to show you. And if you want to start with a deck, then I think Coffin is a really, really good player and deck builder. You can start with this deck and go from there to the things you like.
Nice.
So that was the first. And yours? What's your first deck list?
So I think first I'm gonna have a look at. Let's go for green steel aggro. And this is inspired by another one of our friends, a good Locana friend, Ray, who is kind of, for me, the sort of one of the go-to people for more aggressive builds of green steel. This is my take on it, but he's been tinkering with all sorts in this space, so I don't want to lift the lid on his creations too much. But yes, so the theory here is that you basically just pivot to be a more aggressive version of Green Steel that leans into having massive explosive ability with Go-Go Tomago.
Mm-hmm.
All your standard stuff that you would expect to see in one of these lower to the ground Green Steel builds, so your Smees, Docs, Ursulas, that sort of thing. But you're really exploiting the huge reach that you have with Go-Go Tomago in a deck like this,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to set up situations through the pressure you create where you can get a lot out of Tomago, right? So you have the option to, because you play all of the steel removal songs like Let the Storm Rage On, Strength, even a couple of Baboons, you have the option to kind of just damage to get more reach out of Tomago, or just, doing it the old-fashioned way, use removal to actually remove stuff. It's still a pretty cool thing to do. Couple of placeholders in the list to mention. The Gantu isn't actually Gantu. That's the good
Mm-hmm.
Gantu, the new 5-cost one. The
You want to say
4/3.
this is not good, or what?
Yeah, I want to say this. Yeah, I don't mind saying. I don't mind saying that. I want to say this one isn't good. Yeah, especially in a list like this. I'm pretty sure it's maybe at its worst in a list like this too. And the other one is the When Will My Life Begin? That's representing the new 3-cost song that gives something resist +2 to your next turn and draws a card.
Mm-hmm.
Really cool song when you're playing Ursula, Deceiver of All.
Or
I feel
Diablo.
like, yeah, totally. Yeah, extra protection for your Diablo, which is really, really awesome. Really good to play it twice, draw 2 cards with
Mm-hmm.
Ursula. And you're kind of like the way that you play Storm, right? To remove something
Mm-hmm,
and draw a
mm-hmm,
couple
mm-hmm.
cards. It's like that, but in a protective role instead. Really awesome way to keep yourself fueled up. And I think it's probably going to have the sort of Cogsworth type effect, right? Where people just kind of forget and make really bad decisions into it. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm not too sure if this is a Diablo deck yet. It's light on actions. There's only 14. That might not be enough
Mm-hmm.
to support Diablo, or it might need more actions. But I think as a shell, this is really cool, and you probably
Yeah.
will still be able to play those Prince John hypnotized versions of Green Steel. But if you
I
want to
th-
go fast in a
this is
reliable deck, this
this,
looks good.
yeah, this looks really cool to me. It's first time I see it completely, so I absolutely get it. You basically exchange the discard package for reach, you could say.
Yeah,
Mr. Smee,
just more aggression.
Tamago,
Yeah,
and Doc. Yeah, Doc is an additional. The deck is really good, I think.
yeah. There's other things that there's maybe a case for playing muses or something, so that you can bounce back your Tomagos and Docs and set up cycles like that. But that's a little slower,
Mm-hmm.
more reactive kind of game
Yeah, I
plan.
think you need to go fast to for red. I think, or do
Yeah,
you have problems against red decks? I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
So similarly, if you decide you want to just lock in and go really fast, there are lots of other good 1-drops you can play as well, like Fred, the new one. That's certainly an option to
Yeah.
consider.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't have to be a Diablo deck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think some variation of this, some build of this will probably be pretty effective in the next set. I'd be surprised if it just
Mm-hmm.
wasn't
I
good.
mean, I think, yeah. I think it's this deck should do what it wants to do. I think.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah,
Nice. Again, it looks really, really good. I would be surprised if this will not see play. My second deck, I have 2 spicy ones left.
yeah.
First one is Purple
I'm
Steel
excited.
Aggro. I tested this deck and it really destroys red decks. And
Yeah, I bet.
behind that, it could be bad, but I didn't test it yet. We have a really, really good new tool, and that's Isma. I really underestimated Isma. This card is really, really broken. You want to play Isma always on turn 4, and turn 5 you empty your hand and exert it to draw 3 cards. That's really, really strong. That's wow. I really underestimated this card. This deck is super consistent. It has an absurdly amount of draw power without rabbits, and has an absurd amount of reach. It's also some replacements. The 3-drop wardrop is the new Rose, which gives you
Okay.
1 lore. And the second Mr. Smee is this card that's revealed today, and that's how is she called? She has such a weird name.
Oh, I can't remember. It's a
Calhoun,
cool card though.
yeah, Calhoun,
Oh, Calhoun. Yeah.
Calhoun, yeah.
Yep.
And she is really strong as well. I think I was really surprised that people overlooked her because I think it's a really solid 2-drop. What I really like about about this deck is that you don't have to play the Comic Con to be have consistent card draw, and it's really
Yeah.
it's really you draw so many cards that's absolutely crazy. And because Doc was two less, but Doc and Isma in combination I think really enough cheap for cheap is important. Cheap draw power that this deck needs. Yeah, and Isma, as it's really, when you test it, you will realize it's you can also quest with her sometimes, but most of the time, really, you want to play this on turn 4, turn 5. You play everything out, and then you draw 3 cards. Is a lot. It's really a lot, and she's still then on the board. Needs to be removed, and it's really much. And the reach is insane by this deck. You have the new rose, you have gold, and you have getting lower. So I'm not completely sure if steel is that bad. You don't want to wield this deck, or you get machine guns in your face, and you have options with the resist characters. You have Mickey, you have the Calhoun, to be maybe able to have a good resistance against steel. You could also play Olaf's or something as well if you really want to face. But it depends on the meta game, of course, if some type of. But I think it's one of the best. It could be one of the best Aggro decks in the future. Because
this
just yeah.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, just the combination of these two cards, Dog and Isma, is so good for me because they synergize so well, because you don't necessarily need to keep a Dog in your opening hand. If I have an Isma, I keep her. But if I have no Dog, I don't need to keep it, because you have eight of these draw power cards, and you will draw into them really likely. The only thing I would like to play here is the new 2-cost spell. I really like, because it synergizes very well with this deck, the Twin Fire, because you discard your cards. But the problem is, uninkable removal cards hurt this deck really much, because in 80-90% of the time you don't want to remove your opponent characters. You really only want to remove it if it's an Ursula or something. And so I put in 3 smashes right now. I don't know if that's correct, but I wanted to have some kind of removal still to be able to answer some cards. Diablo as well. I mean, you draw a shitload of cards, that helps them a lot. And if you have no access to any removal, could maybe too crazy. I'm not sure about the crabs as well, because you rarely trade. And Fox, I thought, as location answer or something.
You've got an interesting tension there with the crabs, which is that obviously crab and trading is not something that an aggressive deck wants to do a lot.
Yeah.
But because you're playing 4 Diablo, 4 Cuzco,
that was
they're
my
like
idea.
the best. Yeah. They're the best crab targets in the game, right? So what are you gonna do? Not play crab?
yeah. That was my thinking too. So it's really hard to lose games against red decks, and maybe there's even a shot against steel decks with 2 really good resist characters now available to this deck. It's also very fun. You play your hand out.
Yeah,
for me, it's very fun. You play your hand, draw, play your hand, draw. It's really fun for me. I think that the card that released today, the review today, is a really good addition to this deck, because I think that could be underestimated. If you play Maleficent into the Calhoun, that's really strong, because you quest with the Maleficent. I mean, they have to trade. That there's no. They will always trade the Maleficent. And then you trade with the Calhoun, you get 2 lore, remove their character. She will nearly always survive, because she has resist 1. She eats any one cost character. I think this combo especially is really really strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's
I
not
really like the look of this. This looks really awesome. This is the kind of thing that I want to try, definitely.
nice. And I think you can do. I tried to locate the library first, but
Sure, yep.
it was nearly always too slow. I nearly 100% of the time I inked it. Because if you have the Isma or so, you play rather 2 and 1 drop and then use Isma, then you play library. That's 3 cost that does no lore is still
Yep.
bad for the deck most of the time. So the only high cost characters are Crab, Fox. They are always near, very often inked.
Yep.
And these burn characters, they are really important, I think. If you get to 18, 19, or 17, even 17,
Yeah, it's just over.
yeah, it's so much.
The,
Uh,
the thing I really like about this deck is that obviously Yzma requires you to empty your hand really fast, which can be a scary thing to do when you don't necessarily know how the next turns are going to play out.
yeah,
But you've got so many of these bodies that replace themselves. So between Broom,
yeah,
Chernobog's Followers, Diablo, Cusco, you play out your hand, but then your board represents like 3+ cards
yeah.
that are
That's
out there as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
So you empty it, draw 3, and then the best thing they can do is wipe your board, in which case you draw 3 more and you're
yeah.
way ahead in the game, back to like 6 cards in hand. Yeah, that
Board wipe
seems
was
awesome to
never
me.
I was never sad about a board wipe because
Yeah,
I draw most of the time 2 cards and I keep the dog or something. And Isma on turn 4 is really hard to remove for many decks. There are not many cards that can deal with her immediately, so it's kind of safe to play her. And I didn't
yeah,
realize that fact that I was too dumb for that you play her and then you can empty your hand in the next turn, and then
yeah,
you
yeah.
exert her immediately. That somehow I didn't realize that because I don't know. I thought okay, need to have an empty hand, but it's just really good.
Nice.
I really like it. I will work on this deck.
Yeah, it's cool. I like it a
And
lot.
let's see how this deck ends. Yes,
Nice.
and your next deck.
So next up, it's a bit of a wild card. I started throwing some cards out that I was just interested in and thinking about how some of these cards could play together. And I've landed on an Amber Sapphire Heroes deck. And don't let me forget this.
Oh,
I have to ask you a question when I'm
yeah.
done talking about this. So let me keep in mind the question I'm going to
Uh
ask.
huh.
Yeah, so people have built decks like this before, right? You can just jam. Amber has loads of good heroes and aggressive heroes too, like Lilo and Piglet. A lot of the good Amber aggressive cards just happen to be heroes. So you get to play 2-drop Anna, 4-drop Anna for big turns. But this list just jams in a load of cool new stuff. So because we're an aggressive Amber deck, we get to play Simba and Shift Simba, and we get to still do like those set 1 lines of Lilo turn 1 into Simba turn 2 on the play. It's still kind of good. And the thing that really surprised me about this as I put it together is there's like a remarkable amount of redundancy between these effects, which is that you're always, however you curve out, you're setting up a really aggressive opening, and then you have 3 different ways of protecting that board, whether it's Tiana,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's Shift Kida, or whether it's Shift Simba to start readying things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other thing is they all have like all these characters have massive willpower. They're all like 3 and 4s for the most part, which make it a brilliant Rapunzel deck and make the things hard to remove and make Tiana get even better. And it also makes it a good Baymax deck, so you can jam the new Baymax in and use that as some of your reach. It's actually kind of hard for Steel to remove a lot of this stuff. It's all pretty big. You get to also just play like big bodies like
Mm-hmm.
Scrooge McDuck. It's a 5/5 for 4, a card that I've not really played with much, but always wanted to because it's
Yeah,
just
I love him.
a
Yeah.
super solid body.
Yeah.
Um, you're playing purely 60 characters, so Mufasa's not a hero, but who cares? Jam him in because like he's really good in a build like that.
Yeah, of course.
And then the other sort of slots that are kind of flexible are I put Chip and Dale in the new ones. So the 3/3 chip that gives something +1 law when it comes in. This could probably be the Donald Musketeer bodyguard. Is probably slightly better, but the two of them together are really good. A 3/4 that quests for
Solid.
2. The other one, 3/4 quest for 2 for 3. Great body in this kind of
That
deck
is
as
really
well.
good. The Dale is really,
Yeah,
really strong. Yeah.
yeah. So because the Dale's good and the deck wants the Dale, the chip starts to look pretty good as well. The other card I was thinking about that had been spoiled since I put this together is the new 2-drop Lilo.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really know where it goes because your Anna in the 2 slot is pretty important. Piglet quest for 3 a lot of the time, so he's awesome. And Simba is needed for shifting the Simba. It probably eats the Piglet slot because Piglet is kind of like a little unreliable. But for a deck like this with no top end, that recurring Lilo is a really good aggressive threat to close the game out as well. So you basically just curve out really good aggressive stuff and get to draw some cards with Rapunzel, get to present a ton of threats that are hard to remove at the same time. Um, yeah, the question in my mind was like, is this like actually good? I put it together as like a funny thing, and now I'm looking at it, I'm like, this might actually be like a kind of good deck. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
there's always place in the meta for the best aggro deck, and if it's this that can be, then it has its place in the meta game. It just depends if this is the best aggro deck out there, and I think what you said is all true. This could have some serious legs. I think. Oh, this is really cool. I like that.
There's a lot of interesting synergies in here. That's what I'm sort of getting hooked on is the way it's not just a pile. It is a pile of random aggressive characters, but it's also a pile of cards that play really nicely together. Um, if your local store has tournaments or nights where they enforce that you can't bring meta decks, if you bought this, you would smash
Yeah.
like everyone. You know, if you were looking to play something off meta and different, I think this would like crush. But
The best
yeah,
thing, what I initially liked about it is that it's very aggressive and has surprisingly really good could have really good legs against steel because everything is so sturdy here
yeah,
and has so much willpower. Then
yeah.
because steel is always the Akko crusher, but um not against this probably.
Yeah, it could
And
struggle here, right? Because everything is, yeah, like you say, it's all big.
Mufasa is also always bad for them. And Simba is really strong. I mean, Zeta, of course, then some cards need to be tested, like the Baymax also. But
Yeah, yeah.
what it's also really cool. What I would like, but that's not possible in this color combination, is also some kind of cheap removal, but it's not possible here.
Yeah,
It's just not
that is
possible. I
a
thought the whole
quite
time, but
glaring
the
hole.
best thing is let it go probably, but that's way
Yeah,
too expensive. So there's no way to. Yeah, but maybe this deck just don't need it or should ignore it probably.
yeah. I think it's like a quite a cool little different build that
Yeah,
there are actually some interesting tools for now. So I wanted to throw it out and yeah, get your thoughts because this is the kind of thing that my mind always drifts back to and thinking at some point this
I
is going
think
to come together and there's going to be some sort of synergistic pseudo tribal deck like this.
for me personally, Lilo absolutely needs to be in here.
Yes,
Um,
yeah,
but it's
yeah,
like you said, it's hard
yeah.
to
I think it
cut
probably
things
goes in that
here.
Piglet slot, right? But Piglet is so good.
I don't know. Um, I mean, the 4-drop Anna is busted, but is the 2-drop Anna that good? I mean,
Yeah, I don't know.
she's
It's a 2 Law 2/4 for 2 in this
yeah, it's
deck.
in
That's pretty
this.
good.
That's not bad. That's true. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, everything is hero here. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, she's
My final thing I like about this deck, and it's probably something to hate about it more than like. It's absurdly expensive to
Oh
buy the
yeah.
cards for this deck.
Oh,
This is
all
like
legendaries.
it's almost mono legendaries. It's not something you should just buy to try if you
Yeah,
don't own
that's
these cards. You need like a good collection to play this.
and Rapunzel is
Not
still the most expensive legendary, I think. And
yeah.
Mufasa is expensive. I mean, the new
Yeah,
ones, you
right
don't know.
right now the Dreamborn list for this has it at about 450. But that is without.
Without a new
So right now
cards.
there's no prices for Simba, there's no prices for Tiana. Yeah,
And
this is a
Baymax, all three not.
yeah, it's a pretty disgustingly expensive deck. So yeah,
Yeah,
proceed with caution, I would say, if you if you do want to play something like this. Either have a
Locana.
good
Locana will
yeah,
be pay to win in the future.
yeah, maybe.
No, really cool.
Although I don't know if this wins. It might just be pay to play a bad deck. But
Let's.
we'll see.
We'll see. Needs to be tested.
Yeah.
Okay, my last deck is what I spent the most time thinking about,
Mm.
and because I was initially not very high on green purple, and I'm still not too high because of some nasty cards that got revealed, and green purple did not get that much to shine. I would say the best card we got is Go Tamago. But I thought how to make it work. The problem is I see is the new Maui is really scary. I would be very surprised if that card isn't a relevant part of the new meta game. So I think we need to have ideas how to beat it. The problem is Maui freezes our whole deck when he hits the board. We have no reliable removal for him in our traditional list, and we need some removal. That was my first thought. That I thought, okay, if we play green purple, we need removal, and we need consistent removal, not a one-off or a two-off. We need consistent removal. So I thought about what are the cards we have. We have really bad options. That's the problem. We have only Mother Knows Best or You're Welcome or maybe Bruno, but yeah, weird. But then I thought Clarable and You're Welcome were traditionally a very good combo, of course, because you give the opponent and you draw two cards. And we have some new tool, one new tool, and that's bent to my will. I always said that bent to my will is probably a good card in any green deck that's not hyper aggressive, because it's a very scary card for any control deck. They need to play around, and if they know you play it, especially in open deck lists, they will suffer a lot. And maybe the lines are too I dream too much or something, but You're Welcome plus either Clarable or Bend to My Will is a really crazy good combo, because if you sing You're Welcome with Rabbit and then Bend to My Will, it's probably GG, because you removed the highest threat of your opponent and then Bend to My Will, so he probably has no board anymore, and or not I mean not a big board anymore, and you discarded his whole hand. So I think we have to try to get use out of this combo. The problem is I would like to be still able to go under some decks and not be a complete control deck or something. But that has to be tested. It's hard to say. I think with the build right now I played is really low on uninkables. I have 3 Lyles, 4 Rabbits, and Bend to My Will. That's only 9. You could add some other things, but I want to have the Lyle, because Lyle and Gogo Tamago are really good combo, because you give someone Reckless and then they need to trade and then they have a damaged character. You can nearly force that, and then you can Gogo Tamago the character they exerted. Additionally, the meta asked for other changes. Maybe we have to go up with the Ursulas again, or we need more kits or something. I don't know. That's just was my initial build right now. I really like the new Fritz because they are for me the kind of inkable Merfolk for me. If you don't want to have many uninkables, then play Fred instead of Merfolk. And I can confirm he's nearly always 3 lore. Really, nearly always 3 lore. Except against Steel maybe, but against Steel Merfolk was worse. You can at least inked him instead of Merfolk. So yeah. And the rest is still very traditional green purple thing. Nothing too special. No locations right now. Not very aggressive, just kind of aggressive. Like we were set 3 or something.
Yep.
Yeah, that's my idea. I don't know if it has legs. I don't know how good Bend to My Will is in this deck, but at least
I
the
really
existence.
like.
Yeah.
I like the idea with it. I think that's really awesome. I really hate You're Welcome. It's like one of my
Yeah.
least favorite cards. To me, it's the problem that green purple has with its lack of removal. When I see the card You're Welcome in my hand, it's like I'm just face to face with that problem. I'd prefer to ignore it, right? But every time I draw You're Welcome, it's a reminder of how poor our removal is for me. So I really like the idea of like comboing it with Bend to My Will, because you already have that, as you say, you already have that combo, the pseudo combo with Clarabelle, where you're welcome something and get to draw 2 extra cards because your opponent does. But I would much prefer to just be discarding their hand when you do that. Like you say, a lot of the time you're gonna, if you're welcome something, you're gonna maybe get them for 4 cards, and it's really hard for them to come back. Of course, Clarabelle and Bend to My Will is like a bit of a nombo, right? So
yeah, that's true. That's true.
That's something to keep in mind, but I think a lot of the time that's not really going to matter with only 2 copies. Yeah, I like the thinking. I think it's really sound. Lyle and Gogo, like you say, is
The idea
really
is
good together.
that the card advantage you play with value. So you think, oh, I have draw 2 cards, but it doesn't matter because either Clarabelle or Bend to My Will come, and it doesn't matter that much that you made card advantage. I mean, if you can do everything on the board with your cards in your hand, then it's bad. But yeah, it juggles a bit. It juggles a bit with card advantage and disadvantage. And I try to maintain this deck, a deck that's hard to get to have it problems, because you have many tools to disrupt your opponent, and hopefully this is one step to it. I think the Clarabelle is still too strong to not play it. It's just an absurd good card. And for the rest, nearly the same. There are so less spots we can cut. It's really, I was surprised when I built it. We can't cut anything. That's so this is the bounce is so good. It's better in our deck than in red purple, I think, because we have so many tools. We have Ursula, we have Gogo, Tamago, we have even Kit or Lyle. That's all synergizes with the bounce package. So it's, what can I cut here? It's really hard.
Yeah, it's so difficult. It's so difficult across the board. It's really, really easy to make suggestions for new cards, isn't it? Like when a new set comes along. But the question about what goes just gets harder and harder for every deck. I don't have good answers, but something has to be really, really good to make the cut now.
I really think we could all underestimate Bend to My Will.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, many people do not underestimate it, but yeah, I think it's. If I would play red purple or something, and I would play against it, I would be really scared of drawing too much or something, because I know, I have to play everything so I don't get punished by. Yeah, so let's see how this ends. I will test it a lot and see. Or you will probably work also a bit on it.
Yeah, I've
And
got a slightly different build that I'm working on, but I think we'll probably end up landing in the same place.
yeah, probably, yeah.
I've not been testing been to my will yet, but after this,
Me neither.
maybe I
Me neither.
will.
Just came the
I think
idea
it's
today.
yeah, I think it's something to try. Like you say, well, we sort of talked about it last week. It's one of those cards that just by existing, everybody has to think about it, right? It now has to be on your mind what
Yeah.
exactly you do about this
Yeah.
and how you play around it. And like in open deck lists, having a copy of it or 2 copies of it completely warps your opponent's decision making, which is fantastic. Yeah, really cool. I like it.
Nice. And now your last deck list.
Yeah, so this is the one I've been working most on. It's just an updated red purple list, and I'm not a red purple expert, but I've certainly played a lot of purple cards, of which most of the cards in this deck are purple. So I feel at least half qualified to talk about red purple and what I would like to see from it moving forward. The biggest change that you're going to see is 4 copies of Maui Shark. This card is wildly powerful to me.
For me too. Yeah.
And I think some people, you look at those abilities on it and you start thinking about, right, okay, I'm going to gain lore whenever I play actions. How can I play as many actions as possible with a shark out and end the game? Not really what we're trying to do, or I don't think you have to think that way. You can just view that as an extra source of reach, and keep playing actions that are just good. So rather than jamming as many cheap actions in as you can, you'll see the suite of actions and songs here is kind of there's some slightly weird new stuff, but for the most part, it's like things that you've seen before. So still 4 Be Prepared, 4 Friends, 1 Finders Keepers, 4 Brawl. I'm switched from like Medusa Tremaine effects to playing a couple of Be King Undisputed because it lines up so well with Maui. Quite often you're going to have, let's say you've got a Peter Pan Shadow Finder in play to give your evasive stuff rush, and you also have a goat or a rabbit. You just play your Maui on 6. You can sing your Bee King to remove something with your rabbit. Immediately send your well, no, don't Bee King first because I'll get rid of their exerted thing. You work out how it lines up, but you you get to take something out, rebuy your Bee King, and then play it again afterwards. By singing if you want to do that. For the most part, that's what you're going to do, right? With this Maui, you're just going to buy back some good action and get to use it again. It's another form of card advantage. The synergy with Elsa is great. The synergy with Peter Pan Shadowfinder is
that's really busted with
fantastic.
Peter Pan. Yeah,
so now you've got the deck plays Peter Pan, Maui, and Elsa and Brawl. I don't know how a Diablo beats this anymore. You'll just have like a million answers to Diablo randomly in a deck, which is fantastic. And then on the lower end, we've got a bunch of 1 and 2 drops that replace themselves. So 4 Diablos, 4 Cuscos, and then you max out on crabs to make the most of those. So the notable things that are missing here is like the Flynn Sisu package. That I think, right, if you want to get Maui in and start doing Maui stuff, something has to go. And I'm kind of most comfortable with it being Flynn Sisu, even though those cards are really good. Some
is
people
always
I know
questionable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sisu is a brilliant card, but the Flynn is questionable. So when one goes, the other starts to look less good. And I think as an 8-card package, it makes sense to cut them over some of the other stuff. I know some people are kind of exploring their options for cutting the bounce package instead and freeing up room through that.
I saw that, yeah. Full burn then, and maybe the Comic Con too, and so.
Yeah, for me, I think that's like you're going a little too deep on. You're warping the deck around Maui rather than having it just like slot in as this high value, really powerful card.
It's less consistent, of course, I think, because you rely on that Maui, and if you don't draw the Maui, it's oof.
So if you're playing red purple, you have to be playing and building for consistency, right? It's like the deck's greatest strength is this absurd consistency it has. I'm not interested in a build that becomes inherently inconsistent because it needs Maui to be good. I just want to play this really powerful card. When I have it, I'm happy, and when I don't,
Yeah.
it's fine. The deck plays the same as it ever did. I'm not looking at any bad cards.
No. I mean, there will be
Like,
enough games probably where you ink Maui turn 1 and turn 2, and you do other things and win this game. Probably.
totally, yeah.
Yeah, totally possible.
Yeah. And the other thing to talk about that's been cut is the 5-drop Maui.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's controversial because obviously it's such an absurdly powerful card. In my head, I tell myself that the reason it's gone is because like it's really bad in a Go-Go Tamago world. It's like gonna get stuck in play, and
you have 4
your
crabs.
opponent's
That's
gonna get.
also a reason for
Yeah,
me.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's what's actually happening here is that I'm trying to do Maui impressions with like trading my 1-drops up into bigger stuff in the spot when you would be doing that with Maui and just developing different cards instead. Again, you've got those Bee Kings and 1 Dragonfire to do something like what Maui does on those turns. Not exactly the same, but yeah, this is what I've been primarily testing. First impressions are it's really, really solid.
Yeah, I would
I'm
be really
sure
surprised if this is not a thing.
Yeah, the full-time red purple experts of the world, I'm sure, have their own thoughts and maybe won't land exactly here, but I think Maui isn't, it's not like a meme. I think it is as good as it looks. Yeah, I would
Maybe
kind of.
we land on 2 or 3 Mauis in the future. That could also be
Yeah,
possible, but
yeah, this might be swinging too far towards
yeah,
that. Just to,
maybe not because he's just very powerful. Um,
yeah,
looks. Oh, I wouldn't. I really like this list. I think I would be really surprised if this has no legs.
yeah.
I think it's not possible. I
The
mean,
only other card I really want to consider is the 1-drop Moana, the 3/2.
that's
It's
a spell book, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good at just
Mm-hmm.
the one thing it does. I don't know if it wants to be in
If
a list
it's
like this or not. I think some people will be drawn to that and give it
the
a go.
problem is,
Maybe.
I tested it too, and even Diablo 1-drop is annoying sometimes if you're on the draw and your opponent plays, I don't know, anything, and you cannot trade with Diablo. And if you want to fit in here too, then you have 2 characters that can't challenge. So could be maybe too deep for me. I don't know, but
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's what puts me off as well. Is like that's awesome. That's like a great little clock, isn't it? On turn 1, it's just going to sit there, and then eventually they're going to have to trade with it, and it's going to probably trade up because 3/2 is a good stat line. But red purple does not really like any sort of condition where something couldn't challenge. That's these things have to be able to do that. And that's why I lean this way, where instead we've got the Diablos that's doing the same job of sitting there questing until it replaces itself.
If your opponent opens with a, I don't know, 1-drop Maleficent,
Yeah.
and you're on the draw and you have only Diablo, you take your deck and throw it out of the window, I think, because it feels so
Yeah, it's
bad.
reasonable.
Yeah. It feels so bad. I mean, Diablo is a really strong card, but what I also really liked is Peter Pan is, I love this card since it was printed, and I think it was underestimated for a long time. I really like that he's finally got a deck where he really, really shines. And I think he's also a very good tool against aggressive strategies. And the rush 2/3 is just often good enough to do very good things. I think even the one the set 1 Rafiki, you would be often glad to have him in your hand, because this, if they have an Ariel, and then, so I mean, this is 1 strength left, but less, but it's just it's, if you turn 3 there exerted Cindy, you rush into that with it. That's you don't want to more from a 3-drop. So I always was high on this card. The good thing as well is automatically, like you said, it's tagged high against green. So no Diablo. You just say no to Diablo with this.
That's not a bad place to be, is it? Being pre-tagged against green. looking at the quality of green cards coming into this set and what we've come from, and the fact that Green Steel won 4 out of 6 US challenges, I'm
Yeah,
not mad about having good
yeah,
game against
yeah.
that deck. I don't think it's going anywhere.
And Mo is
Um,
also really good against them. I think they
yeah,
need to exactly have the Bruno in that spot to remove him. If not, what I like about Maui, you, people were discussing about this card a lot because, yeah, of course, he has some meaningful effects, and he has. First of all, I think a card that has so many things printed is most of the time good. It's like Lyle
yes,
for me. There's so many
yeah,
things on this card, so it's probably good. And yeah, and basically, this card says in my testing, if you play this character, your opponent can't quest as long as this on the board.
yeah,
That's the first effect for me for this card. And if this would just say your opponent can't quest while this is on the board, we would say it's really, really good. And this
yeah,
is
yeah,
what this card says plus its effect. So I really think, and the people say, and what I get the idea why this could not be super broken, because it's a relatively high cost card that does nothing when it hits the board without
mm,
Peter Pan, and that's the big downside. So if it gets removed immediately, it did nothing, and that's kind of reasonable, but it's actually not easy for many decks to remove it. Um,
yeah,
it goes under all red removal except B prep. It goes. It's Zeus is the best. Zeus is the counter card to him, but yeah. So have any. Not every opponent in your tournament run has Zeus in his deck.
yeah.
I'm
Not
really
even
sure
not
about it.
even all your steel opponents play that card
Yeah,
anymore,
yeah,
which is pretty good. Maybe that changes moving forward, but yeah.
yeah. So yeah,
But
that's looks
I
really really solid to me.
I put my money where my mouth is, by the way. I got my foil Peter Pans in the mail this
Oh,
week.
nice.
So
I have three too. Yeah,
yeah,
that's the. I
yeah,
love them.
yeah, it's a really cool card.
Yeah, so I hope you got all a good insight, maybe some inspiration for the next for the starting season. I have some cards, but we talked about them nearly. I just want to have your opinion again on the Calhoun because we didn't talk about her
Mm.
much. Do you like the card?
I do. It's really hard for me to work out exactly how I feel about it because when I first read the card, I thought it
Yeah,
had two. I thought
yeah,
it
it was
quested
very
for
funny.
two, and yeah, in our Discord chat,
Yeah.
I started losing my mind. I was like, did they think that like Mr. Smee was not good enough? Look at this card; it's so busted. No, it only quests for one. So I've really not cooled down from that and worked out how good this card is questing for one yet. I think it has to be in a deck where you really want your 2 drops to, where it's really important that they live for your sort of tempo purposes. So that purple steel build you showed to me is like the perfect home for it, right? Because sometimes you're going to get to like crab trade up, make a really good trade, gain 2 lore with it. In addition to it living, it is a 2 drop that survives storm, that sort of thing, just like the 1 drop Mickey, which is really cool. This has like enough text that it's hard for it to be bad,
Yeah.
but with the caveat that uninkable cards, in my mind, have to be good
Mm,
all the time. If you the inherent inflexibility of a card not being able to be inked means that you need it to always be good. An uninkable card that's bad in some matchups is pretty much an unplayable card outside of some like very niche exceptions. That's kind of a philosophy that I try to follow,
yeah, that's
and I
true.
think this looks kind of bad against some of those control decks. So that maybe swings me a bit. I'm more than happy to try this in a build like that purple steel that you showed. I think could be really cool in that, and yeah, has a lot of upside. Um, but even then, it's fighting with some pretty good 2 drops. Docs me, Cusco. You've got a lot of good ones there. Yeah, it's probably worth including and
Um,
trying though. Could be really good.
yeah, I know, totally get you. But it's a bonsai problem.
Yes.
So a bit because Banzai was so bad in some matchups that you really hated yourself for not being able to ink it. Yeah,
Yeah.
so we will.
Although
Yeah,
I was just going to say, although that makes me like it more because over the course of this set, I've come to just love Banzai. I think that card can almost do nothing wrong, even though it's really narrow
yeah,
and
that's
shouldn't be
true. That's
playable.
true.
I love Banzai. It's the
Um,
way that I've come to play green purple now. Yeah,
it fits the deck, of course, really, really well.
yeah.
Yeah. The other card that's really controversial to talk about, we talked about a bit, but not that much, is the Lilo, the new. Some
Mm,
people are super high on her. Some people think it's absolutely garbage. What do you think? It's hard for me. It's very hard for me to evaluate this card. I think I see this card a bit as an uh, how can I say that value pressure. So if you have many
mm,
cards, some cards in your hand, and you want your opponent to force a B prep or something, you just play one of these and two characters or something, and then you did not spend your whole hand and then you can do it again. And so in a step where your opponent has to be prep before and after that, I think she's really good.
yeah. You can start to think about it in the same way that you do those 1 and 2 drops that replace themselves, right? So your Diablos and Cuscos, those kind of things of I'm safe to play this whenever because if it gets removed, whatever, effectively gain a resource. Now the question mark is like how good that resource is when it's
Yeah,
guaranteed to be a 2 cost 1/2.
quest for two at
Sometimes
least.
that will be
Yeah,
fine. Yeah,
yeah.
1/2/2. Sorry, like sometimes that will be really good. Um, there'll be other cases as well where you can kind of improve this. You know, if you play a whole new world and you discard a couple of these, and then you have them in your discard ready to play at some point, that feels like
Jackpot.
pretty good
Yeah,
exchange. But then you just drew 7 cards, and you probably have better things to do with your ink. But
that's
it's a
true.
sort of
Yeah.
inevitability, right? It gives you this inevitability. You effectively can't run out of gas. You're going to be able to
Mm-hmm.
play something. You'll be able to play a threat every turn. Once you get a couple of them rolling, it gets much harder for a lot of decks to actually keep pace with that because you have an endless supply of little dorks, effectively. Um, but your opponent's removal is rarely endless. Like that will have an end. They might be able to be prep you a
Yeah.
bunch or CC you a bunch or repeatable removal is not something we really see, right? There's not just like something that exerts to remove something every turn. So it's a really, really, really hard card to evaluate.
For me too. Yeah.
I lean towards it being good because
Me
there
too.
will be some builds out there that want that pseudo inevitability that it brings, but maybe it's a little too slow and a little durdly. But honestly, like a 1/2, basically, are you if your deck wants to quest for 2 with its 2 drop and you don't care too much about whether you get a second quest out of it at that point, it's the best thing you could put in that slot because
Yeah.
then you get to do it again when you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I really
yeah, I
think the
think it
stats
needs.
are not stats are not super bad. I mean,
Yeah,
there exist two quester, but yeah, it's not super bad. And I could see this being really really annoying in when you play against it. I could see this being very annoying.
yeah.
Cause
Yeah,
yeah,
right now
yeah,
the difficult thing in my head is that right now I don't see a deck for it. Is the problem? I don't know where I slot it in first. There are probably a couple of decks that it's like not bad in, but I don't know exactly what kind of build this goes into. Maybe like a hyper aggro type thing
mm,
again, where that's a deck that's looking for inevitability. But because I don't really see like a tier 1 or tier 2 deck that it slots into, that's rough.
that's
But
true.
then
Yeah,
it's on the opposite side, I don't like in a vacuum. This is really powerful. This is just the kind of card that looks like nothing and wins games, right? But you have to be ahead. You have to be way ahead. So it has to be an
mm,
aggressive deck.
mm, mm.
or it has to be like at least a deck capable of gaining a massive amount of tempo. It at least has to be a Steel Song type deck where you get way ahead on board early in the game and then try to leverage that into a win eventually. But someone will put this into a list and do really, really well with it, and it will be aggressively slanted. Yeah, I don't know if I'll be the person to build that, but I feel confident that it has a place.
Yeah, but yeah, it's not. It's of course not super bad. It's like some people say. Don't want to say names. um, and the last card we didn't talk about it much is the White Rose. What I think is
Yeah,
a really good addition, especially for green purple. In the deck I showed you, I had the rose till I cut the last cards because yeah, it was cuttable. But I really want to play this in green purple too because it's the first really good. Thank you, Ravensburger. The first really good aggressive green purple 3-drop. We had nothing. We had absolutely nothing till today, and then finally we got this. And this is a really good card. I think. Good solid stats too, and nearly always does two lore and is burn and or what do you think?
I think it's really cool. It's like you say, the most important thing about it is that it gives us a 3-drop that's really good proactively.
Yeah,
So we have a problem of we have too many 3-drops. There's too many good 3-drops to go in our deck, but none of them are proactive.
yeah.
It's
It's all kids and
Fox,
Lyles and
Crab, Kit, Lyle. They're great. They're all reactive cards, and they all have very important roles to play in helping us gain and maintain the tempo that our deck needs. But when you are just curving out, they're pretty mid. You know, they
yeah, yeah,
often do very little. Crab is probably the best one played in a vacuum, where it's just like just having a crab on board changes a lot of combat math and
yeah.
is 3/3 body is good. So just having a 3/3 body that does something like this is it's going to feel a lot like how when we used to play 3-drop Maleficent. You just have this 2/2 to run out when you've got nothing better to do on turn 3. You don't need to answer anything. You play this because it's the best thing you can do because it gets a card back, and the others don't do that. Yeah, I'd like to play this card.
Yeah.
And again, it looks pretty. It's going to give you some extra goat effects. Basically, you're going to be able to bounce it and get like
I
half a
think
goat off your bounce exchange, and sometimes that'll be all you need.
yeah. I think it's really hard for them to balance the aggro strategies in this game because I could see a future where you have only these cards in your deck and you
Yeah,
win by turn 6 or so, and it's hard for them to balance it. But it aggro didn't have a really good spot in Lorcana in general, I would say, till today, at least compared to other TCGs. Or what would you say?
yeah. I think these aggro decks have always kind of been towards the start of every set when people are working out what to do, and people all make the same mistake every single set. They overtune their decks
Mm-hmm.
based around theory, and they play loads of cards that are like good as solitaire cards, but then they don't play out so well in an actual game setting when the opponent's doing stuff. Aggro really thrives in those things when you're trying to set up your little interesting 2-card combos and those sorts of things. Like the aggro decks just run you over. So the aggro decks look kind of good around the start of each set, and then they drop off and they sit like tier 3 type deck. You have to be aware of these decks. Someone will come along at your locals and beat you with it. So you have to know what to do. But it's really constantly interesting to me that aggro is not that good in this game because the nature of the like questing mechanic, it favors proactivity. Like you're at an advantage as the one questing, right? Like it's an attacker's advantage. Your things can't be interacted with. Your characters can't be interacted with by your opponent's characters until they have exerted, until they've got. It's like having an unblockable first attack sort of thing. Not a perfect analogy, but you see what I'm
Yeah, I know
getting
what
at.
you mean.
There's an attacker's advantage, and in spite of that, aggro's not good. So,
Yeah.
like yeah, I think you're completely right to say it must be very hard for them to design these kinds of cards, because it could become so good so fast. And we're not far off being able to just have a deck full of like this reach stuff,
Yeah.
which means that the game will need more Lyle effects, more of those like thievery, pirates life cards. You're gonna see, in the same way that some other games, like as the power level creeps up, you get a lot of incidental life gain on cards, just like a
Mm-hmm.
random thing. Oh, this also gains you 2 life when you
Mm-hmm,
play it, that
mm-hmm,
sort
mm-hmm.
of thing. I think they'll have to keep peppering in like
Mm-hmm.
law reduction on cards, just like, oh, well, this
Yeah.
4/4 for 4 also just like drains the law off your opponent when it's played, and that's not a stat or an ability they put a lot of value on. It's just in there to stop these solitaire type decks from getting out of control. We're still a little way off it, but
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's the more of them they print, the more it becomes an issue.
the problem is with balancing, it's hard to make them viable. Either they would be overpowered or they would
Yeah,
be underpowered, but they need to be exactly viable and not overpowered or underpowered.
yeah,
That's really hard to balance for them, I think.
yeah.
Yeah, but let's see how it works out, because the really high competitive TCG I played was World of Warcraft, and there was always a tier 1 aggro deck, always. I mean, I cannot. I mean, you could say Steel Song is kind of an aggro deck, but it's not really aggro. It's fast, but it's not an aggro deck, I would say. Oh, no.
I don't know how to characterize it most of the
Yeah,
time. Sometimes I play against it and I'm like, this is the most busted aggro deck
yeah.
I've ever played against. Sometimes I play against it and I'm like, this is the most crazy tempo deck I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, this is a ridiculous control deck half the time.
Yeah.
I think the secret, that what's really going on there, is that the deck's kind of broken. Like,
Yeah.
it's just a little too good. When it fires,
Yeah.
it's also pretty skill intensive, which is a good
Singing
mitigating factor
mechanic
for it.
is just it's just very
Yeah.
powerful.
Yes.
I heard some people say, "Oh, we don't have good cheap removal in Lorcana," but then I just wanted to say we have characters that can play it for free, like 2 damage and draw a card, and this is not cheap, or what? I think this is very cheap, but yeah.
We have I have a lot of these. So the card game I used to play a lot was Magic the Gathering. A lot of my
Yeah.
TCG friends, they're Magic players, and some of them have got into Lorcana, some haven't. And then when there are people that I speak to about the game that want to know about it, they sort of ask about the basic mechanics. I tell them about the questing and challenging and everything, and they always say, "Doesn't that just make aggro so broken? Like, isn't aggro just insanely good in that game?" And I say, like, well, it would be, but there's also like a 0 cost Electrolyze, which is a card in Magic that does
Yeah,
2
I know.
damage, and draws a card. And in their language, they're like, oh, yeah, I can see how that existing would mean that aggro can't really do anything. Like, yeah, it just costs nothing, and there's no drawback really. Okay, yeah,
Also, there
fair
exists
enough.
much healing effect in Magic, I think. At least comparable comparison to
Yeah,
Lorcana.
that is balanced out by that sort of, like I say, the incidental life gain
Yeah.
helps to make that a bit more manageable.
Okay, so we talked about 1 hour 20. I think it's time to say goodbye. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you liked it. If you have questions or suggestions, you can always write comments. I try to answer them as fast as possible. And I'm excited for next week. We will have some really new data, I think, about what decks can be good or something. I think we will be a way step ahead of today. And yeah, thanks everyone. Until next time, and bye bye.
Bye bye.